So, welcome, Elizabeth Shuhan. I call you Liz all the time and work with you frequently, but you are a teacher that we work with a lot. I know you taught for a little while Emily, who does all of our amazing marketing, as one of the resident flutists here. You are also the principal flutist in the Fort Smith Symphony in Arkansas. I think, is this going to be your 25th season this year?
Actually, I just figured it out. I think it's my 26th season. So
It's
one of the
awesome.
first jobs that I got right out of school. So
Yeah. And you are a lecturer at Ithaca College for
mhm,
music education. You're a visiting lecturer at Flute at Cornell University. You are certified in the Suzuki method.
mhm,
And then you are also faculty at the Luzerne Music Center, which is a summer program
mhm.
in your area. And yeah,
And I'm actually my main gig, which is kind of funny because you've mentioned so many places, is that I started the flute program and I'm on the flute faculty at Opus Ithaca School of Music. And I'm actually a big part of my job is teaching flute students, but also community engagement
yeah,
and education. So, and it's very special to me, this school, because it's where my son attends school too. So, yeah,
that's great. Does he play flute as well?
he does play flute, but his main instrument is piano.
Oh,
So, yeah,
that is
yeah,
one I wish I had gotten better at.
same, same.
I remember actually, I think when, unlike other kids, I begged for piano lessons. My mom said, "Where are we going to fit it? I don't know." So,
No, I know it's really, you have to have access to a good instrument,
yeah,
right? So,
it's
so
tough.
important. Yeah.
Well, I want to start with where you started with flute. Like, how did you come to it as an instrument? We all have our own story of how we chose it.
We do. It was not, I can't say to you, oh, I heard a recording of James Galway and and I just immediately had to pick up the flute. I did hear recordings of James Galway and Jean-Pierre Rampal, but I'm actually a child of 1970s hippies. I say that I say that lightly, but also, with great love and affection. My father was a bass guitar player in a band, and my mother was a belly dancer of all things, but also loved the arts. She was not a musician, and she married my stepfather, who was also not a musician, but they loved the arts and they traveled around the South, finding other artists. And so a friend of theirs had given them a flute. And when it was time to choose an instrument or choose a path in the sixth grade, they said, how about you play the flute? And I was like, I don't want to play the flute and anything. I don't think you can't get a sound out of this flute. And it's black and it's been, it's dusty and it smells like mold.
Mhm.
And I wanted to play the oboe, and they said to me, "What's that?" So I had a flute, and so I went to band class in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and it took me 3 months to get a sound, and so I did, and that's how it was started. Yeah.
Wow, you stuck with it for 3 months, not
And
getting a sound.
yeah, and I stuck with it. I mean, that's the thing. Most students, uh, they don't get a sound, and they quit, right?
Yeah,
So but I had people around me that believed in me, and I think that was key. So I
yeah.
wasn't going to give up, but I didn't really have any other options. The band director said, here's the method book and go. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Did you have like a lot of private lessons or anything at all growing
So, yeah, I think because of moving around so much as a kid, I really didn't have many teachers until the eighth grade. I mean, I think I went to, probably four or five schools in my elementary to junior high. And so then in the eighth grade, the band director that I was working with, he recommended a teacher, and that's when I started on the path of private teachers. But unlike my students who have the same teacher for 4 to 10 years, depending, I was probably with 6 to 8 different teachers from middle school to high school. And some of them, studying with people like Jean-Pierre Rampal and others, and I had no idea. But my parents wanted me to have a teacher. It's just we kept moving around. So I did have some wonderful teachers growing up, and I think that's what, I had a little bit of everything, and that's what really pushed me into like finding music, and also in particular not just going down the performance path, but also education.
Yeah. What was like the moment where you kind of knew this was going to be the
Yeah.
profession you want to get into?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like in the 10th grade and making it into all state, and that was also the same year that I heard live Marina Piccinini, who was very, very, very young in her career.
Mhm.
And I mean, probably like maybe 20, or I don't know, very young. And she came to the University of Arkansas. And my private teacher said, let's go to this, this recital. And I had good success that year. So I was like, oh, okay, I think I want to do this.
Mm.
So, yeah, just becoming privy to people who were doing it. And then after that year, my family moved to Alabama. So I started all over again, like getting into Allstate and
Yeah.
all of those things, which was a challenge moving to a new state.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And in the South too, I lived in North Carolina for a while. I know like the All-State and the marching band, like they take that stuff pretty seriously down there.
Very seriously. And my final years in high school were in Huntsville, Alabama, where we were in marching competitions. And the big school there, University of Alabama, and my parents wanted me to study with the teacher there at the time, Sheryl Cohen. So that's what they did. They took me once, twice a month to go study with her. And meanwhile, yes, marching band, so very important there. And that was definitely something that intimidated me.
Yeah.
But I did do it.
Yeah. My school was too small and I'm from Oregon originally, so it
Yeah.
always was not a big deal there, but that's cool.
Yeah. 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 It's a big deal. It's a way of life there.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you went to university in the South as well, and then ended up in New York. How
Yeah.
did you end up
Yeah.
up here?
So I did all of my formal education in the South and at state schools. And I, after I finished, I was actually working in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I had moved back up to Fayetteville, Arkansas, moving there. And, I think typically like anyone who graduates with a master's degree and I had a music ed background, so I did some teaching. But I was auditioning. I was like determined, I mean, even though I didn't have the typical performance path of going to conservatories, I just had good success winning some major competitions, and so I was auditioning, but also I was really fascinated with this teaching thing. And so I stayed in the Fayetteville, Arkansas area and found Suzuki. I was teaching there. I started studying the Suzuki method, which we'll get to soon. But I ultimately met my husband, who's a traveling musician as well, in a group called Rhythm and Brass. And they did residencies there at the University of Arkansas every summer. And I went to school with the trombonist. So, as is with, music, friends connect to other friends. And so the trombonist introduced me to my husband. So, my husband is the French horn professor at Ithaca College. And so, long distance was not going to work out. That became very clear after a few years. So
Yeah.
I moved up to New York. Yeah.
Awesome. And you still go down to Arkansas
Oh, I
because,
do. Yeah, I do. I mean, I lived in Fayetteville, Arkansas for 7 years, and I had lived there as a little kid. I love that area. It's a beautiful area. It's in the Ozark Mountains. Just a very artistic area. I got my master's degree there, and I was playing in two orchestras there, the Fort Smith Symphony, and at the time, North Arkansas Symphony, which is now Symphony of North Arkansas. And so I held those positions while I was there, and I had, was fascinated with Suzuki because there's a Suzuki music school located on the campus there. And I had friends that said, I really want you to teach my child, but you can't teach my child until you go get Suzuki flute training. And I was a little bit cavalier about it, like, well, I have training, I know what I'm doing. I have a master's degree. Um, but it really changed my world. So like I started teaching in the Suzuki method there. And then when I moved up to New York, I started very small and it just kind of grew. Yeah.
yeah. So speaking of Suzuki method, I have heard of it, and I know, especially with string players, it's a big thing and how a lot of them start. If you could like sum it up for like Suzuki method for dummies, like what is sort of at the core, how
Yeah.
does it work as a process for teaching students?
Yeah. So, you know, some people call it the mother tongue approach, right? So it's just like, as if you have a child, and how does your baby learn to speak? Your baby learns to speak by mimicking what you do, mama, dada, right? So their first words are whatever it is that you are saying to them. And so it's really about they're it's multifaceted that way. The Suzuki approach has listening involved, right? It's got the parents as the partners, right? So the parents are involved in the lessons. So you create this beautiful triangle of the parent, the child, and the teacher. Nurturing environment, right? So again, parents being involved in nurturing environment within the studio space, encouraging and positive, and then a nurturing environment at home. Where unlike for me, my parents were like, go practice. I don't hear you. Like, I don't hear anything in that other room. Very different, very much hands-on that way. I was really fascinated with the repetition and the breaking down of fundamentals,
Mhm.
and just like the small steps, right? And again, because I had had so many teachers, I had all of this information, but it wasn't always so organized, right? So there's this organized process with Suzuki. I love the repertoire building. So we start here, and each piece is connected to one another. Um, and so you start with Mary Had a Little Lamb in the book 1, and you end with Ibero Concerto in book 14. But of course, we add all of the other rep. But that I think oftentimes people are like, you only know how to teach pieces in the Suzuki.
Mhm.
We know how to teach everything.
Yeah.
But the Mary Had a Little Lamb to a Bach Bourrée in the very first book, or I mean Handel Bourrée in the very first book. So, and we're playing Bach and um, Orpheus and all of the big flute greats in those early books. But each piece is connected to another
Mhm.
pedagogically. So we're going to add this because now you know E. And now we're going to add, this little gem because now you know F major scale. And now, so it's well thought out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, and then the group lesson aspect, because I love community and groups. So we work on repertoire. And a lot of people say, well, doesn't that mean that you have to play by memory? And I like to think of it as like it's more of we play by heart.
Mhm.
Um, and yes, we do teach reading. We're not musicians that don't know how to read. So I like to get that message out there. So, and I teach college students, so I bring this philosophy into my lessons with my college students as well. So that's a little bit. I probably
Yeah.
spoke too long on this, but
No, not at all. Uh, would you say it's anyone could start on Suzuki method? Like if adult beginners could start with
yeah,
it? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, what I like about the Suzuki method is that all of the pieces are so tuneful, and I think that, an adult student will bring, a method book, say Rubank or some method book that it has whole notes and half notes from the very beginning. And it's just not, it's not feasible for anyone to just play a whole note on C, so I think starting with basic tunes from the very beginning, I think it's nice because adults usually get into it if they've never played but really like the sound and the tone of the flute,
Mhm.
that they can get. They want to play something right away, so
Yeah.
I think it's for everyone. And of course, it's not like I teach the book without the music in front of you. I can have it there, but um you know wow, if you can connect to the ear first, um,
Mhm.
you're going to have a beautiful voice right away, on the instrument. So the tricks and the reading will come.
From the teaching perspective, what is the process like to become certified?
Yeah, so you can go through teacher training through the Suzuki Association of Americas. There are teacher trainers out there that train teachers. I have a dear friend, Wendy Stern, who's right
Mhm.
in your neck of the woods, and
Yeah.
she's now a teacher trainer. We actually started training all those years ago with Mr. Takahashi in the late 90s, where Mr. Takahashi was coming over to the United States to work with teachers. And so I had met her there, but now she is one of our teacher trainers, and many others, Merritt Biddix in Chicago and Kelly Williamson in Canada, and the list goes on. So you can go and register. You have to take an Every Child Can philosophy class on the Suzuki method, and go take some training. Yeah, yeah.
How long does it generally take?
So you'll take a book at an institute or sometimes in a private session, and I don't remember the hours. I actually took some training again over the pandemic, but
Mhm.
quite a few hours. If you go to an institute, it's within a week, and then you do some observations of teachers working with students.
Mhm.
Yeah, a commitment, but so worth it.
Very doable.
It's really fascinating to watch others break down all of the elements and teach music, and working from beginners to advanced students, right? So yeah, and I think one of the other things about Suzuki that a lot of people don't know out there, I was just sharing this at NFA a month ago. Was it a month? That the method was founded by Toshio Takahashi, a Japanese flutist, and he studied with Marcel Moïse.
Mhm.
So that was his, like, I think, his only teacher. I mean, he studied the flute with Dr. Suzuki, but he worked with Moïse, and he actually has one of Moïse's flutes. Yeah, and so the method is, there's some Tafanel and Gobert, in the method, and there are all of Moise's favorite pieces
Mhm.
are in the book. So I think some
It's
don't
like,
know this.
yeah, incorporating some of the standards we all already use into a more
Absolutely.
structured method.
Absolutely. And all of it is based on Mr. Takahashi's work with Moise, and how he learned to play with him. Even we call it spitting rice. And so, starting producing the tone, here. And I think that it's fascinating. I didn't know that actually, so I was just going because my girlfriend wanted me to teach her daughter
Hmm.
flute and had no idea what I stumbled upon all those years ago. And, honestly, it's what I do with all of my college students too. I share, they may not come in and be able to play by memory. Maybe they can. Some students just want that music right in front of them, but um, it's fascinating to see how they can pick up things from the philosophy, from these teachings so quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. Tell me more about what you do in your area with community building, because I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So um I live in the heart of Ithaca, downtown.
Mhm.
And when I was asked, adjunct teaching is just that, adjunct teaching, right? So you're kind of, in a few places, but not, over a span of time throughout every day. You're at this university one day, this college the other day. So when I moved downtown, I guess 8 years ago, and my son was taking piano lessons at this community music school, I was teaching there a few students, but it really started to build. And I think me being downtown helped. And I started seeing this school grow. We didn't have a community music school that was solely for music. And it started, with a lot of piano students, but over the years has grown, obviously. And so it's like if you build it, they will come. So I started like hosting flute days, and you all have been to that. And I started hosting master classes, and I started bringing the college students down into the building. And um, I didn't want to. I've never been a big flute ensemble person, but one of my students said, "You should start a flute ensemble here." So I started
Mhm.
a flute ensemble. And then I started writing grants for the school, not just for flute, but for the other things happening. And, just really inviting the community into jam sessions, right?
Yeah.
Or one of our studios does dances from around the world and invites the community in. They play and they learn all of the dances with a caller,
Mhm.
uh, things like that. I mean, the list goes on. We're getting ready to have what's called a porch fest, where we can all perform on a porch downtown. And so our jazz musicians are going to perform for that. The flute ensemble has performed for that. We have the Ithaca Festival, and we go and perform for that. So those are some of the community building things that we do. Just a few of many.
That's great. And it
Yeah.
gives people exposure, and
Yeah.
probably the younger players too, if you're getting the college students or more advanced players involved, give them this chance to see,
Yes.
what they could work up to. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things. I grew up in a very small town, and so that kind of stuff would have been so helpful to see kind of earlier on, like this is what the potential is that you're working
Yes.
towards, uh,
Yes.
to
Yeah.
inspire
And
you to work for
yeah,
it.
I didn't really have that either. So, I sometimes say to many of the students, like, wow, this is really a one-stop shop. If you'd like to sing in choir,
Mhm.
or if you would like to, take voice lessons or take piano, you can come and do that here. And again, a program, of younger students to older students.
Mhm.
And living in a college town, then our older students are also privy to those college students, and many great concerts on both hills at Ithaca College and Cornell. So we are pretty lucky.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, and I think I have to mention too, I know we've talked a lot about teaching and community and university and my background, but I'm also the parent to 4 children.
Mm.
Uh, and we're all musicians, which I kind of shared. And I think that's why like community is everything,
Mhm.
because the community really helped raise them. And I think that's why I've been so vested in our community because of that.
Yeah, it's really important to have. It's like, you have your professional space and your
Mhm.
personal life, but also you whether it's church or whatever, we
Yeah,
all need a space to have some sort of community building. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
that's great that you're helping provide that there.
Well, that's I like connection, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, nurturing connection. So that's very important,
Mm.
especially post-pandemic.
Yeah, I think we all crave it. I was just messaging friends earlier this morning, like, we don't see each other enough, and it's time to have like a ritual as friends
Yes,
here to, whether it's
yes,
a dinner party or a cocktail party or whatever, we all have to get
yes.
together more often.
It's
So,
so important. Yeah, yeah. I think my time when I go and travel and play in the orchestra in Arkansas, that we just finished our season opener this past weekend, and it was fun because they were celebrating 100 years, and so they had a big party for the donors, and the donors could pay to come to this fancy party, and but they invited all of the musicians, and so it's as if we hadn't seen each other in years, and photo booth, and we're dancing, and it's like it's just so nice to enjoy those things.
yeah,
So yeah.
it's great. Um, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and be a bit of a flute nerd. So I know
Yeah.
you play pretty exclusively on Burkhart flutes for a long time. I thought
Yes.
maybe you could tell me what you love about them so much.
Yeah. In college, I'm so sorry, my email is going off. In college, I was playing on a Powell flute, and I went to a convention in Dallas in the late 90s, which where I was Dallas was only 5 hours from Fayetteville, and I would actually go to Dallas often, if there was a master class or a concert or whatever. And but that year, whatever year it was, I went to the Dallas convention, and I had been playing on a Burkhart piccolo, and I tried a Burkhart head joint on my Powell flute, and it was one of those early ones that had a gold riser, and I didn't know what gold riser was, but um, I put it on my flute, and my flute played so differently, and it was one of those things that was like, this is really interesting.
Mhm.
And I played a lot of chamber music as well as playing in orchestras, and I felt like I just needed something different. And so from there, I played on this flute for a long while. And then when I moved to New York, I was, I'm only 5.5 hours, 6 hours from Boston. So in the 2004, 2005, I was making trips to Boston and just going and playing different flutes in Boston at the makers. um, and I just fell in love again with the Burkhart flute. So I have a very nice, what I say backup, but an 018 Burkhart flute with a gold head joint. And then I also have a Burkhart Elite piccolo, which I love. And then, of course, my other flute, which is a 14K Burkhart and a platinum head joint. And
Nice.
my husband and I play in a trio, so he's a French horn player, and I find that these Burkhart flutes can play with any instrument, and there's just something different about it.
Yeah.
So, and if I need to play something, yeah, I mean, it just, again, I can switch back. I've got two really incredible instruments. So, and they have been so good to me. It's amazing how, they remember me from the early days.
Yeah.
And me, I like my connections. So
Yeah.
I'm a pretty loyal person. Like when I find something good, I just stick to it. I don't know, that could be boring, but I just kind of stick to it. And I really I connections and loyalty are just so important to me. So they've been really good to me.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love working with all the manufacturers. I actually just got to visit Burkhart recently and got to see
Oh,
how
yeah.
everything is made, the whole process. It's just so cool how like invested they all are in like
Yeah.
building these flutes. And it's a small world, so it's just
It is a small world. And I know that they, well, it's as it, it's always about the right fit, right?
yeah.
So, and, it's nice to keep seeing the same people over and over again each year, that it feels like home sometimes, I mean, yeah, even though you might not talk to them for a year, but they're still there the next year if you have a question about your instrument or you're looking for a new piccolo or whatever, you know. So yeah,
Absolutely.
just like you, nurturing the connection here.
Um, well, I don't want to keep you too long, but I usually ask if you have any advice for teachers or young people who are going to become teachers soon. If you had like a little morsel of wisdom as they enter or continue to work in this space as a music educator.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that changes. That's ever changing for me because I always feel like sometimes I find something like, oh, I haven't thought about that. But I think one thing that has been so helpful to me as I think about my career and all of the musicians that I've worked with, the young from young to advanced, is just staying curious about things, right? So staying curious, asking questions, and being open to new ideas. And I think that is oftentimes, we get set in our ways, right? So it's like, this is the way we have to do it, And I think just being open and sharing, So I think that the more that we are open and curious about things and we share, the connections are made, and I think it breaks down walls
Yeah.
and because it can be so isolating, right? And when you're teaching, and one of my favorite aspects of what I do is that being, like you said, the world being so small. I work up at Cornell University, and I teach flute students. There's another flute teacher there, and Juliana Popinski. And so we both work with the students there, and we have formed this really beautiful connection, and we've recorded CDs and all of that. And we teach together up there. But when a job came open downtown, she's like, I think I might be interested in teaching with you downtown too. And just like, she's been working with college students, her whole career, and just that, like, what would this be like? Kind of just imagining, hey, let me try this. And I think that's what I so admire about my friends is like, hey, let me try this. Maybe I need to be curious about something. So I think that's the most important thing, for me, is just a little, like, be open and be willing. So
Great.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for talking to me today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, as you all know, I adore Flute Center of New York. And in a pinch, you can get me instruments very quickly. Um, and my students and we are all so grateful. So I appreciate the variety and the speediness and yeah, and even my own mistakes of, oh, this head joint doesn't fit this instrument.
All right.
But I just I'm so thankful for you all. So thank you for all that you do for the flute community.
Thank you. Yeah. And we got to make it up to another flute day sometime.
Yes, it's coming back. I
Awesome.
have ideas. So yes, yeah, very soon.
Great. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn more about our guests, there's more information below. If you're a teacher, make sure to sign up for ClubFC NY to unlock free shipping, extended trials, and commission for teachers, as well as other exclusive benefits for you and your students. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe.